I got too complacent, and that's when I stopped growing. They say ego kills growth. When I think of ego, I think of like this part of you that makes you think you're the shit. The part of you that makes you think that you're on top of the world. It's the part of you that gets complacent, that starts thinking that you don't have to do this because you're seeing results, or you don't have to do that because you're getting better or at like a nice place in your life, whether physically, mentally, or financially. It's easy when you can't justify the bad habits that you do or the good habits that you skip that will get you closer to your goal. We just call that laziness and undiscipline, right? When you can't justify it. But it's another thing when you can justify it, and we call that complacency. Section 1. What's complacency and how does it take form? My definition of complacency is when you have a level of self-satisfaction to where you can justify actions that don't align with yourself or your goal. Think about it. Complacency can only start when one starts achieving or progressing in something. You can't get complacent in something worthwhile if you're like a Discord mod that sits on his gaming chair all day playing League of Legends or Overwatch, right? With Cheeto and Mountain Dew stains on his shirt and teeth with cum socks laying around. Because there's no self-satisfaction to that. You have to be satisfied with yourself in order to actually become complacent. And that's why it's so dangerous. Because complacency can only happen when you're progressing, when you're working hard and being consistent and constantly improving and doing the work, right? Day in and day out. So when the thought of you can skip this day pops into your mind, it seems more appetizing because you can justify skipping the day and not feel bad about it, right? Because you have like that proof and reassurance through the previous work that you did on those other days. It's like, I've worked so hard. Let me skip this day. It's not gonna hurt, right? You now feel good for skipping the workout or eating the junk food or not working on the business or not studying. You now feel like you should do it because you're like, let me just treat myself. I've been working hard. Let me just treat myself. And this can domino effect and put you in a rut. This is complacency. Self-satisfaction to where you can justify your actions that don't align with yourself or your goals. And in order to know actually how to get complacent, you have to go and do something. Start being consistent in it. Do the hard work and actually see progress in the goal you are striving for. Now we know complacency comes from self-satisfaction, but where does self-satisfaction come from? Yeah, it comes from doing things worthwhile, progressing in those things, having a purpose and being disciplined, all that other stuff, right? But like, how does it actually form? Like, what's the root of self-satisfaction? And it forms off your expectations. If you think about it, we have expectations about everything in our life. How our body looks, how our diet looks, what we put into our body, how productive we are, the friends that we carry. We have expectations for everything. And we have two types of expectations. The best of ourselves and the worst expectation where we would be satisfied just enough to not feel pain. And we are the average of those two, right? So it kind of looks something like this. And by the way, I found this like kind of graph by Charlie Morgan. I don't know if he made it, but this is where I got it from. So yeah. So you can see that your highest expectation is the peak and the lowest is the valley. And this dotted line shows you where you'll lay at some days. You might be at the peak or at the valley one day, but if we took the whole week, the month, and year, you'll see that you'll be around like this middle of these two expectations. And if you ever fall below the lowest expectations, you get like a drive that I talked about in my rut cycle. And I like to call like this part the valley of dissatisfaction. This is where you get a drive to go and do that thing. And the reason why is because you feel a level of pain and dissatisfaction. That's why I call it the dissatisfaction valley, which makes you spring into action and get back to at least your lowest expectation. Let's say that you have expectations on your body, like 15% body fat is the lowest expectation you have for yourself, and 8% is the highest. If you go below, or in this case above 15%, let's say you're 20% body fat, you'll feel a level of literal mental pain and dissatisfaction because you're in that valley of dissatisfaction. And that dissatisfaction pushes you to get back to at least 15%. Or if it's an online business, let's say your lowest expectation of yourself is $8K a month your highest is like 15K a month. If 1 month you go below 8K, let's say you get 6K a month, you'll feel mental pain and dissatisfaction, meaning you can't be complacent because you're not satisfied, right? And since you're not satisfied, you will start springing into action to get back to at least 8K a month, right? You keep on working, you work like a dog, you have more conviction in your sales, right? You'll make a better product just to get to that 8K, just to get to your lowest expectation to where you will feel satisfied again. Now, just because you're satisfied with yourself doesn't mean you're complacent, right? If you're in between your highest and lowest expectations, you won't get complacent necessarily. At most, you'll be kind of satisfied. What actually gets you complacent is when you believe that you're at your peak. So instead of the expectation graph looking like this, where it's kind of oscillating from peak to valley, and you have like spaces in the middle, your graph starts to look like where you kind of believe you're staying at your peak and you're on the peak of the mountain, right? So it goes up and then it stays there. And since we believe like we're at like the highest we can expect from ourselves, complacency comes in to bring it all down. Maybe complacency is our friend. Like maybe it purposefully brings us down in order for us to work hard again. But in order to stop complacency, you need to increase your expectations, right? Because when you increase your expectations, the threshold or the amount of things you have to do in order to feel satisfied or like be satisfied enough for you to like justify your actions gets higher and higher and higher, right? Meaning that you'll make more progress. Section 2, increasing your expectations. How do you increase the expectations of yourself? Well, it's pretty simple. Remember the graph and the oscillations and stuff and how you're the average of your highest and lowest expectation. And when you believe you're at your peak of what you expect out of yourself, you get complacent. And the reason why you struggle so much with complacency is because you expect so little out of yourself. So how can you expect more? Well, you have to increase your expectations to the point where the lowest you expect for yourself is higher than your previous highest expectations. Usually our highest expectation is our goal, right? That's the peak of what we expect for ourselves, right? The aesthetic body, the straight A's, the 10K a month. But what if the goal you have is the lowest you expect from yourself? But you're probably thinking, right, how can I expect that if I'm so far from it? But remember, like that dissatisfaction valley, right? When you are below your lowest expectation, what happens is you feel mental pain and dissatisfaction, which makes you push harder, work harder, be more consistent, not have excuses, and basically it springs you into action. But more importantly, you won't get complacent, right? This is the whole point of the video, how to not get complacent. And your peak should be one step above your new goal. Maybe for aesthetic body, it's like 160 lean with like a 225 bench. That's your goal, right? So it's the valley. And the peak should be like 170 lean with a 285 bench. Or if it's business, like 10K a month, the peak should be like 20K a month. So basically what I want you to do is grab a piece of paper and write down like the expectation graph. After that, I want you to identify your goal. What is your goal, right? And instead of letting the goal be on the peak of your expectation, write down your goal on the valley, the lowest part. And then for the peak, just think of like one step above or ahead of your goal. Or just use the examples I use. You're in the dissatisfaction valley, but you get closer and closer to your goal. After you achieve your goal, which in reality now is the lowest you expect for yourself, you'll be in like this graph. So now you're satisfied and working towards your next peak. But psych, you're not working towards your next peak. You're like that peak now, like after you achieve your goal becomes the new valley, right? Then you have a new peak, which is one step above that, right? And if you don't know what your peak is or should be, just wait until you achieve your goal and you have a feeling of what the next step should be. So if you can't figure out what your peak is, just keep on working, just focus on the valley, focus on your goal, focus on achieving your goal. When you achieve your goal, then you can start thinking about what's the next step. And that should be your valley. The next step should be your valley. So it should look something like this, kind of like a staircase. Instead of like these oscillations where the lowest you expect for yourself is your goal, which is like, it can be 10K a month, straight A's, whatever it is, but you're not there yet. So you feel dissatisfaction, which helps with complacency and helps you spring into action and chip away at your goal. After you reach your goal, you should have a peak when you have like that peak becomes your new valley, meaning now you're feeling dissatisfied again, right? So let's take the example of like the 10K a month. You get your 10K a month and your peak of that was 20K. Now the 20K a month becomes your new valley, right? And what this does is it helps you spring into action, right? Because you're dissatisfied, right? And this keeps on going on and on and on and on and on. And that's why it's a staircase. So you keep on doing this process on and on and on and on, and you'll never get complacent again because you'll never be satisfied. And I just want to clarify, you can still be fulfilled and happy and dissatisfied. I mean, I'm dissatisfied. I want more subs, views, customers, but I ain't sad. I don't feel like I'm a loser or anything. It's just that I want more of those things. I want more of those things to push me to do the work and not get complacent. I still enjoy scripting, recording, editing, going on calls. That's fulfilling work to me, and I'm proud of myself for doing it. But trust me, I'm fulfilled. But I'm still dissatisfied. So don't think just because you're dissatisfied, you're you're going to fall into a depression or you're going to have negative emotions. It's just a feeling that helps you become greater, that helps you achieve more things, that pushes you to be greater and motivates you. That's all dissatisfaction is. It's not something negative. It's just something to push you. I just want to add that I have free one-on-one coaching calls where I help young guys lost in their journey of self-improvement gain clarity and knowledge on how to actually start progressing in their goals without the uncertainty on whether they'll achieve their goal or overcome their roadblocks. So again, it's free. You just book the one-on-one call and we can just talk about whatever you feel like is stopping you from making progress and finally accelerating. So if you're interested, links in the description below this video. Anyways, that's all I have for today. I wish you luck on your journey, and peace.